Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I know in my last video, I did say that I will be doing a 3K giveaway very soon. I will be doing that. I'm not going to talk about it today because I have to go and get an upper endoscopy this week, so I won't really have time to coordinate all of that, and I don't want to have to do all of that until my procedure is done. It's nothing serious, but just know that that will probably be going up next week. It should, all the details will be on my Instagram, and I will definitely talk about it in a video as well. So if you're waiting for the giveaway, don't worry, that'll be very soon. But today we are going to be talking about probably one of the most hyped up novels of 2023, and that is the debut novel of Johnny Compton called The Spite House. This was released through Tor Nightfire. This has been talked about on all of the blogs that I follow for upcoming horror lit of 2023. I've seen this all over Bookstagram. I've seen this all over BookTube. Haven't read or seen any reviews about it yet. But I did just finish it. It did come in my most recent Nightworms package. And I pretty much read it because they sent it to me. I've never heard of Johnny Compton before. And it just seemed kind of like it was going to be an interesting haunted house story. So when it came to me, I obviously was going to read it. But this was not a book that I was initially planning on going out of my way to read when it was first announced. And just for the above reasons. But let's read the inside flap and then we will talk about this because I have a lot to say about this book. Alright. Eric Ross is on the run from a mysterious past with his 2 daughters in tow. When he comes across a strange ad for the Masson house in Degeneres, Texas, Eric thinks they may have finally caught a lucky break. The most haunted place in Texas needs a caretaker. All they need to do is stay in the house and keep a detailed record of everything that happens there, provided the house's horrors don't drive them all mad, like the caretakers before them. The job calls to Eric, and not just because there's a huge potential payout, but because he needs access to the secrets of the Spite House. If it is indeed haunted, maybe it will help him understand the uncanny power that clings to his family, driving them from town to town, too afraid to stop running. A terrifying gothic thriller about grief and death in the depths of a father's love, Johnny Compton's The Spite House is a stunning debut by a horror master in the making. So the premise of this book makes me think that it's going to be very Shining-esque. It makes me feel like it's going to be very gothic. And it really makes me think it's going to be about a haunted house and the experiences inside a haunted house and the ghosts that are there, if there are ghosts. And that's great. Except that's really not what this book is about. And I think that is kind of what caught me off guard with this. Now, I will say I loved the voice in this book. I thought Johnny Compton was a very easy to read writer. He kept me very engaged. And for the first 80% of this book, I was really enjoying it. I was really intrigued on what was going on, all of the different mysteries, how all of the different stories would connect to one another. And then I got to the end and it just didn't work for me. It felt like all of this buildup that we had was kind of just thrown together at the very end with no explanation on exactly how everything happened, and I was left with far more questions than answers by the end of it. Somebody on one of my videos commented that they wanted to like The Spite House, but they didn't because there were so many ideas kind of thrown together that just didn't work in the short amount of pages that we had, and I fully agree with that. I was really interested in the history of the Spite House and the ghosts of the Spite House, and I was very interested in the mystery surrounding Eric and his family. However, on top of those two things, we also got the mystery of Eunice and Eunice's family. We got a bunch of history on the house and the land, and a bunch of the people who were interacting with the house and the land, and they all had different stories and they all had different ties to the house and different connections to Eunice and the Spite House. We had a whole lot of background on Eric's family, both his wife and his daughters and his grandfather and his grandfather's adventures and his grandfather's relationship with the daughters. And to just fit something into 260 pages, it felt like there were just so many ideas and concepts and they needed to be trimmed down. And on top of all of those storylines, you then have the storyline of Max and Jane, which is also a very cool and interesting story that kind of just evolves, climaxes, and then disappears. It goes completely unresolved. You then also had the storyline with Eunice's friend who debunks magicians, or not magicians, ghost hunters and haunted houses and haunts. And there was just so many characters and so many things going on, and I felt like everything just kind of got buried beneath one another. So I wasn't concerned with things I should have been concerned about or plot points I should have cared about. It was more just trying to figure out what was happening and why it was all connected. And yes, the Spite House was a very pivotal central focus for many of these storylines, but at the same time it also wasn't. Eric's grandfather and his whole storyline was also a very central concept, and I feel like we never really got answers for why the Spite House is acting as it does. We get the background on the Spite House, we get the background histories of these ghosts, but we never get enough depth to understand why any of what's happening is happening. Like, the character who had the most character development was probably Des, and I feel like we only scratched the surface with her. But I was really engaged in this book for the first 80%. I really did like where it was going. I thought it was intriguing. I loved the tone. I wanted to see how everything unraveled and then sewed back together, but it just unraveled at the end. I don't think I like the ending. I don't think I understand the ending. There wasn't enough. If you're going to change the rules of how ghosts work for your fiction, especially in horror lit, I'm okay with that. There are definitely certain rules that we follow, right, with werewolves and vampires and our horror tropes, and every now and then we bend and break them. But if you're going to make up new rules for ghosts, they need to be explained. And I felt that a lot of this book didn't explain how ghosts work and how life works and how the other side works. And it just banked on the fact of keeping all of that a mystery for the reader to create its own horrors. But instead it just made me confused, and therefore made the ending of this book really, really, really difficult to navigate. And I really didn't like it. I don't know, it was just a lot of cool concepts thrown together, and they just didn't stick the landing for me. And I really wanted to like this, and I would love to read more from Johnny Compton, because I did really, really love the first half of this book. I was so excited to see where it was going and what he was going to do with it. And then I just don't think he knew how to execute all of his ideas. I really feel like they needed to be trimmed. We maybe didn't need Eunice's family history. We maybe didn't need Eunice's family's curse. We maybe didn't need the whole history of the Spite House and the relationship between the Spite House and Eunice's ancestors and World War I and the orphanage and Des's relationship with her mother and the relationship with her great-grandfather and all of this crazy stuff. And at the end of the day, there's still no explanation. There's still no answers for what happened. And I just felt like this book either needed to be twice as long to really go into all of these stories, or it needed to trim it back and make it more concise and give the reader answers at the end, because I am so unsatisfied with what happened at the end. And I feel like all of these cruelties were put upon certain characters and not upon other characters. And people who shouldn't have been bad guys were turned into bad guys, and it just kind of felt so messy to me. And so I gave this a 3-star rating. I gave this a 3-star rating, and up until that last 80%, it was going to be closer to a 4. I was really, really enjoying it. But getting through the last, like, 40 pages took me hours. Like, I was just so uninterested in where it was going because I wasn't getting the answers I wanted. I wanted to know about Stacy's whole past. I really wanted that to be explained. I really wanted to really look into Eric's grandfather and understand his whole history and what happened with him and why he was, and how he achieved that. And that's like the whole mystery of the book, is we never know. And that would be okay, I guess, if they didn't have all of the other mysteries. Like, what happens to Eric at the end, I think, is messed up. What happens to Max and Jane, I think, is messed up. What happens to, what's his name? The guy who built the Spite House, I think it's messed up. It doesn't make sense. The motivation for the children who are haunting the house, they don't make sense. There's so much stuff that just left unanswered or not developed, and I felt like it could have totally nailed the landing, and it just didn't, because it didn't put enough world building, didn't put enough explanation, it didn't put enough history and context to end on such a vague and kind of depressing outcome. So from a debut novel point of view, because debut novels honestly tend to be like the weaker of a lot of authors' bibliographies, But I was really, really impressed with Johnny Compton's writing style. And if you want a very unique, original spin on a ghost story that really takes into account the concept of like reality television shows with ghosts, this is definitely an interesting read. And it's very unique. And I don't want to hate on it at all because it is unique and it is original and it's something I've never seen done before. It just wasn't cleaned up enough for me to fully adore it. And I think a lot of that had to do with the ending. There were definitely things that I could overlook in the first 80% of the book that I was like on board with. A couple things here and there that I thought could have been trimmed or could have been expanded upon. But the way the ending brought everything together just didn't click for me, and it did really hurt this book for me. Also, everybody in this book is way too trusting. Like, just way, 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 way too trusting, and I just didn't believe any of that. I wouldn't trust Millie, I wouldn't trust Dana, I wouldn't trust Eunice, I wouldn't trust LaFonda. Maybe I would trust LaFonda. She did seem kind of trustworthy and on their side. But the rest of them, just like, absolutely not. And there's just a lot of blind trust going into this book that I feel like wouldn't happen with Eric and Des, given the situation they were in and what they knew was going on. Anyways, I feel like a lot of people are going to be mad at me for not liking this book, but I didn't love it, and I really, really wanted to, and I love this cover. It's so, like, Tim Burton-y, and I'm glad it had this because it was really hard for me to, like, imagine what this house looked like, and I kind of love the idea of a spite house, like a house that's ugly and unsightly, built on a hill to spite your neighbors. Like, that's quite funny. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. I'm really bummed about this one, but I didn't hate it. I do want to read more from Johnny Compton because I did really love his very easygoing writing style, but I would love to see more depth in his characters, and I would love to see more attention to detail in his plot devices and how they come about, and just tying up some unanswered questions. And I think if he did that, he could be a really, really great force in the future of Harlot. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah.